Hello, comrades. It's Jared here at Brew Republic, and today we are with Tom Palmer, co-founder and head brewer at Mondo Brewing, down in Battersea, South London, and they are our feature brewer for February. Very, very excited to have them on board, and a fellow Yank like me. So fortunately, we'll have subtitles here afterwards if you can't figure us out. Tom, thanks for joining. Really appreciate you cutting the time out to talk to all of our comrades and myself.
It's great to be
Um,
here.
yeah. So the name Mondo basically means world in Italian, doesn't it?
It
And
does, yeah.
yeah, it kind of reflects, I think, what journey you guys have both been on. I mean, reading your bio before, there's not many places you haven't been, it seems. Can you kind of give us a uh, a little bit of a diary of how you guys ended up in London brewing beer with the Mondo moniker?
Sure. I moved here from Tokyo in 2013, and Todd, my business partner, moved here from New York City in either late 2012 or early 2013, just a few months before me. And we ended up meeting at a brewery in East London, where I was head of quality control and he was a production brewer. And we got on the same shift and oftentimes found ourselves working late at night, and really enjoyed talking about alt beer. It was one of the things that really brought the two of us together. And he started talking about his wife's tenure over here in the UK was going to come to an end in a couple of years. And would I consider moving to New York City or Connecticut to help him open a brewery there? I kind of told him I was stuck here with my own family. And so they did some rearranging. She spoke to her company, and the two of us decided to open something here. And throughout our conversations and home brewing in his garden in de Beauvoir town, we just came to the conclusion that we were drawing on experiences traveling, beers we've had in various places, or places we've visited as like a vacation or somewhere we had lived. And weirdly enough, we both had a list of names that we would call our own company, and Mondo was on both lists.
Oh, wow.
Very strange. So it was a pretty obvious choice for us to choose that, and then to continue to, as a home brewer. I started home brewing in 98, 99. As a home brewer, it was just the most interesting thing was to try different beer styles all the time, which leads you to do a bit of archaeology, anthropology, and find out where those beers come from, which takes you to all these different places around the world. And he had the same experience. So it was just about discovering what brings us as cultures together. And beer across the board, is one of the drinks of choice in almost every place, every corner of the earth. So
Pretty common
all
language.
those things, yeah. So I had brewed a lot in the States as a home brewer, but didn't begin brewing as a home brewer in earnest until I moved to Japan, and that's where my my first professional brewing experience also happened. I was able to work an internship on the side of my day job at a brewery there near Mount Fuji.
Oh, wow.
And then I was able to brew in Spain as well. I helped start a brewery in Barcelona in 2012. So those experiences, our love of beers from different places around the world without borders, the name Mondo just kind of made sense, bringing all that together.
Perfect. Wow. Yeah. I mean, boy, that really settles an argument that could go on for a long time. Naming a brewer, if you both have it on there, makes it nice, nice and easy, and then crack on with it.
Yeah.
So the topic's getting a bit stale, and I've made a promise to not lead in with any COVID questions, but I can't avoid it. We'd be doing this interview in person if it wasn't for it. Number one, how are you guys kind of coping with it? And then, are there any kind of odd, happy accidents in a weird way that have come out of the having to adapt?
We had already been working toward redeveloping our website to have an e-commerce widget on it, and Um, we were not quite ready when COVID hit. It just forced us to speed everything up and make sure that we were able to offer our customers a way to get the beers without uh, buying them in a pub or we don't sell in supermarkets, but small greengrocers and packaged liquor shops, bottle shops. So it was something that we did on the fly. At first, we used a third party, and then we built the whole thing into our own website. And I think more than anything, it really made us start to see our customers by name because of the amount of repeat orders. And we, for the first couple of months of lockdown, March, April, May, we were doing, you could click and collect. And so we started to see these people face to face a lot. And it was unlike any experience we'd have with our customer interface prior to that. So it was really a big eye opener to see people put names to faces, faces to names, and interact with them on a level that we hadn't previously. We have a small tap room and it has a loyal customer base, but we started to see people who had not been to the tap room ever before and had only drunk our beer at local pubs and restaurants. Even if it was only a pub that's, a kilometer or two away, that was their local. And that's where they experienced Mondo and consistently. And then when those places were shut down, we began to, meet these people face to face and have wonderful conversations, just even if it was at the front door. When you're limited on your socializing and you start to see the same people over and over, you really, it's an opportunity to get to know the people and understand why they like our beer. And that evolution of us as a company being able to offer that virtual service and the pickup service led to us having way more interaction with people that we didn't know drank our beer, to understand our customer base a lot better, and to understand what beers they really favored. Of course, that helps you determine what to continue to brew. We are a business, so we do use the feedback from our customers to guide our practices.
Right. No, it's really interesting. I've been on the brewery side myself, and there's some long days sometimes. And you kind of graft away, and you just get in the mind of just getting through your workday a bit. So, we had a tap room where I was too, so it was really nice to be able to see the regulars and locals came in. But you're right, there's regulars and locals that you don't see across getting out of draft or drinking it out of a can or bottle, and it probably just reinforces what you're doing so much more. It really helps you probably lock in and dig your heels in during a tough time. So I can imagine that was a bit of a shot in the arm in a way to keep you guys going through it. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. Okay, on to the more geeky bits about the beer specifically. So when I first had Dennis Hopper, and this was before I knew you guys were initially from the US, this might be a little bit of a presupposition from me, but I couldn't help but notice that beer and recognize that beer. And to me, it was, West Coast strain, which is not as in favor at the moment, but a little bit of caramel malt, Cascade, things like that. I know it's not in Dennis Hopper, but Cascade coming through a lot of your beers. And the first thing that really made me feel like it was back when I was kind of in the States was the addition of some carapils in a lot of your beers, which was a really popular thing to do with IPAs, had a little bit of carapils, that little bit of body and sweetness. And it kind of faded out, that concept, but in more modern brewing. But it made me realize that the craft beer drinker and brewer, and there's tons of great people entering the market all the time and that have popped up in the last 3 to 5 years, you can tell that you could tell when they started. They don't know that beer intimately, that kind of brewing intimately. The same as if you had gone up maybe brewing in Belgium, you might carry some of those characters over. But I saw that and I just tasted an IPA from the States when I drank it. It was really interesting. So you clearly have a kind of, I feel at least, a nod to a bit of those styles and maybe kind of how you formulated some of your beers, but your beers also very, very modern, very with the times. So do you have a vision on kind of how you tied the brewing practices of what formed your brewing, um, I guess the original formula you had versus kind of keeping up with the modern trends and the modern tastes?
Sure. Again, I started out as a home brewer, and I came of age in the brewing world at a time when those Southern California and even Northern California beers were the go-to style. I grew up on Sierra Nevada, and to this day, it is still a solid beer and part of the backbone of my education and youth in beer. That's the flavors and the taste that you're talking about are still very much alive in the San Diego area.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the people that I was in a home brewing club, sort of this underground club in Tokyo, a lot of those people that I was in this club with, they're a bit older than I am, and they were stuck on that as being the go-to style. And so it's still part of the fabric of my my brewing forte. I can't get away from that, no matter how hard I try. I'm not trying to get away from it. As a person who started a brewer who started his career as an amateur, my mind was always open, as I said previously, to try different things and beers. That's the most exciting thing about brewing, is the ability to experiment and explore. So as the shift, there's a massive paradigm shift that you can really just see evolved from the late 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, away from this bitter, clear beer toward a product that is more aromatic and less bitter and cloudy. For me, that was just a natural progression to try it, because every time I see a beer that's something that I've maybe never done or tried, I want to. I grew up around a lot of people who would have considered that an imperfection, and sort of these diehard clear beer West Coast IPA fans. A lot of them are just 8 to 10 years older than I am, and in our home brewing club, it was almost forbidden that you bring a beer that was cloudy unless it was a German wheat beer or something. For me, I never had those sort of barriers in my brewing. I have some very good friends. We were talking before you started recording about some people on the West Coast, a brewing podcast that you listen to. Those people are very adamant about not having cloudy New England style. They still see some of that as an imperfection or a flaw. I don't take that same view. I see all types of beers. It's like with music. I don't like to think about genre. I just like to think about whether or not it's good music.
Yeah.
And so if it's good, and you can take that style, whatever style it is, whether it's a Kolsch or a stout or whatever, and you can make something good. I don't see a reason to put up a bunch of barriers and stop myself from trying new things.
Yeah.
So while that is part of the fabric of my my brewing identity, so too is the idea that if something new comes along, I'm going to try to experiment with it, especially if it, some of the mountain and East Coast IPAs that I've tasted and the ones that we make, I think we really are. It's just become, again, part of the palette that we use to represent the brand.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to not use. You do get that. You get a lot of people in the industry that are very adamant about one way to do something, and you really need to use all the tools in your tool belt, or there wouldn't be any more innovation. So
I've always seen brewing, because it's part of culture and culture at large, as not being stagnant or rigid, but more being just fluid and constantly evolving, like language and all these other different parts of culture. I'm not a conservative in any way, shape, or form, and so
right.
even with brewing, I like to be very liberal and think about things with an open mind, and not get stuck in any kind of tropes of, it has to be this way or it has to be that way.
Absolutely.
Because 20 years ago it wasn't, and 20 years before that it was much different. And as we are developing new scientific techniques and formulating new raw materials with cross-pollination or just better use of water and soil and all these things, the ingredients are evolving. So why can't the techniques and the types of beers that we make evolve constantly?
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's amazing. A lot of people like to think they're staying very classic in what they drink, but they don't realize the shifts happening right in front of their eyes. I mean, the go-to beers for a very casual craft beer drinker or casual beer drinker in general now is an IPA. What do you want, Bill? I'll just have an IPA. Never would have been an IPA 10 or 15 years ago. It would have been a lager. But now that's become a normal thing. So yeah, I think people don't realize the ground shifting under their feet sometimes, how it keeps evolving. And yeah, you're really limiting yourself if you have a kind of a stagnant tunnel view on beer. That's something we try to do here is with our cases is introduce stuff that we know you'll like and stuff that you've never had. It's like with any drink, really. There's a time and a place, weather, food, environment, people you're with, that call for a different beer. A beer isn't just one thing. So if you kind of fit it into your life on what's going on at the moment, you'll enjoy it a lot more. That's one reason we did want to do that collab with you guys, the Moth to a Flame. Very, very, very happy with that. And that was a bit of a joke in my description to everybody, saying we took a time machine back to San Francisco in about 2012 and met up with you guys, brewed one and brought it back into the future. So it's funny when you pour it and look at it, you remark nowadays, well, that's pretty clear. What's wrong with that? It's to your point, the paradigm shift. Yeah, it's a great beer, by the way. Really happy with the way it turned out. Fantastic. Thank you. It's cool that we're able to do that for everybody, all of our comrades. We're able to give that to our classics customers who, just like we were speaking about, are maybe a little used to having more traditional ales and bitters and whatnot, but can kind of stretch into something like this. I think this is a great, I guess I'll call it a gateway drug. It's got the clarity, it's got some bitterness. It's not a complete alien thing to them, but we've got a little more aroma. We've got higher ABV. We've got pushing the boundaries just a bit. And who knows where they'll go after they have something like that.
Right.
Yeah, really good beer.
Yeah, it was a beer like that really showed me that beer didn't have to be Budweiser, which is what I grew up drinking. My father worked for Budweiser, so there was always stacks of free cases of beer in the garage. And it's an easy drinking beer, and there's a reason it's one of the most popular beers in the world. It's because it's really inoffensive. But when you taste something like that has a bit more aggressive bitterness and a wider range of very distinct flavors, whether it be piney or citrusy or woody, earthy, tropical, it shows you that beer doesn't have to be. I don't want to call Budweiser boring, because I think there is a time and a place for that. We typically call those lawnmower beer in the States. Something that it's going to quench your thirst and not knock you out as you're doing yard work. But then there's all kinds of beers for all kinds of different occasions. So that should just be. I've always considered, beer, and this is part of the ethos of the company, is it's helping you celebrate different occasions in life, and not, you're not always drinking beer just because you're, sitting in a lawn chair or whatever. Sometimes you're having one with food. Sometimes, and so you vary. Some people don't. Some people will drink the same beer day in and day out.
Exactly.
But I think the craft movement is indicative of the fact that there are a lot of people out there that are more into, just like with food, exploring a different array of flavors.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very democratic. I think there's a beer for pretty much every occasion. I can geek out on the the greatest lambics in the world over a cheese board, and I can just put a 12-pack of a lager away on a hot day, and it's a beautiful thing. So
it
awesome.
is, yeah, very.
Well, I can't wait to get down to Mondo. I was hoping to be able to do this in person and drink all your lovely stuff on draft. I'm counting the days, as I'm sure you are, until you get to see a lot of friendly faces. And
Absolutely.
me and the Brew Republic team will definitely be down there as soon as we possibly can to say hi. And thank you again for being on board for February. Great beers, by the way. I loved everything. Dennis Hopper was a standout. The lager I thought was great. It was really unique. 4 different malts. It's not a typical thing. I thought, speaking to what you were saying, I mean, you don't see that typically, and it really did the beer better for. I think I said I did a quick review online, and I remember it drank kind of like the malt character kind of drank like a pale ale a bit. It was a little more biscuity. I mean, that is a lager that a pale ale drinker could get behind big time. Yeah, right. Loved the lager. Definitely drink Machina all day.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let you get back to it.
Lovely.
Thanks for making time.
When the doors are open, you guys are welcome.
We'll be there. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
All right.